Section 1. And the big idea here is that for the government to be effective, for it to work, we have to fulfill our duties and responsibilities. I mean, some nations go so far as to make you do these things. Israel requires that every man of military age serve 2 years of service in the military. Germany requires either 2 years of military or 2 years of social service. Australia requires you to vote. We don't do any of those things. We call them responsibilities. Okay, so I'm going to try to my best to define responsibility for you in a way relevant to civics. And to look at this, our first question is, should citizens be required to serve on a jury? You know, for all I know, I get home from work today, there's a letter in the mail, congratulations, you've been selected for jury duty. First thing I'm going to feel is, gotta get a sub, this is annoying. I'll do it. I'm going to be grumpy about it. I could get out of it by saying, well, I'm teaching classes right now. It's really going to put my students in a bind and the school in a bind if I take off, and I could weasel my way out of it. But it's my responsibility. So if I'm called, granted, I can weasel my way out. But again, civic responsibility, I should probably show up. I'm going to be grumpy, but again, it's my responsibility. I should probably show up. But that's the thing. I can't be forced to. And that has led some to ask the question, maybe they should make people do these things. But since we're just calling them responsibilities, that's a big difference than requirement. So responsibility just means an obligation that we fulfill voluntarily. Remember, that's the key difference. An obligation that we fulfill voluntarily. In November, I will go stand in line at the Transylvania County Library and vote in the midterm elections. Hopefully I can catch early voting and not be in line too long. It's still going to be somewhat inconvenient. It's out of my way. It adds about 40 minutes to my commute, but okay, I'll do it. Why? Because I feel it's important. But unfortunately, that maybe hour out of people's day is enough to convince some it's not worth it. There are plenty of folks who say, so-and-so politician wouldn't take an hour out of their day to work with me, so why should I take an hour out of my day to work with them? And maybe they're right, but who knows, right? So again, it's a responsibility that we fulfill voluntarily. There are also duties. And the big difference here, our duties are things that we are required to do. Required. For example, it is not just a responsibility that we obey the law. We do it voluntarily for the most part, but there's a penalty if we don't. If you're driving down the road, you're following the speed limit, you're doing that because you're supposed to, but also because if you don't, you're going to get a big fine, and that means you have less money for that month. No one wants that, so we obey the law. Secondly, paying taxes. Taxes are a responsibility. They're something we should do, but they're also a requirement. I'll never forget, somehow there was a mess up with our taxes about 5 years ago, and we owed like $2,000. It hurt. I mean, normally the taxes come out of your check and you never have to deal with it or think about it, but that year we had to pay about $2,000 out of pocket, and man, it hurt. That's $2,000 we weren't planning on spending, certainly on taxes. We had to pay it because if we didn't, you get in big trouble if you don't pay your taxes. That's how they got Al Capone. That's how they get lots of people. Well, taxes are obviously important. They pay for my job, they pay for this school, they pay for the roads you drive on, the police that you're going to call if you're in trouble, the fire if your house is in trouble, etc., etc. If the North Koreans drop in, you'll be defended by your tax dollars. So all of it matters. But there's still things that we have to be compelled to do. For example, defend the nation. I consider ourselves very fortunate that we've grown up in a time where the draft has not been enacted. But as a selfish person, I'll tell you, when 9/11 happened, that was my immediate thought. It wasn't sorrow for the dead. It wasn't concern for where the attack's going to come next. It was my own selfish interest saying, daggone it, I'm going to be drafted. Immediate thought, I'm telling you. Why? Because I didn't want to go to war. I was 18. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to have fun. And certainly didn't want to go die in some foreign country. But guess what? If it comes to it, and a draft is called, that's compulsory, meaning you have to go. You have to go. You go to prison if you don't. And it's happened a few times. It happened in Vietnam. My uncle was drafted into Vietnam. My dad was deferred because he was in school. My grandpa was drafted into World War II. And so on and so forth. There was also a draft in World War I. I have some great uncles that were drafted into World War I. And so you get the point that really, if you're called to defend the nation, it's the law. You have to go. And then finally, serving on a jury. The initial jury call means you have to go. Again, if I can't provide a legitimate reason, then I better be there. And there's a penalty if I don't. Same if I get subpoenaed. Let's say that you were witness to a horrible incident here at the school. Maybe you were getting on the bus and there was an altercation of a severe nature that one of the students was hospitalized. So we're calling that maybe even felony assault with with murderous intent. Someone had a weapon. Luckily, it was stopped before the worst happened, but it was bad. They're going to the hospital. You witnessed all of this. Doesn't matter if you got it on your phone or not, you witnessed it. So you get a summons, you get subpoenaed. You have to go. By law, you have to provide a statement. You have the duty to attend school. We just had a great discussion about how we can protect our democracy and how education is important to that. It's so important to our country that our citizens be educated that we require it by law. Once upon a time, the first compulsory education laws date back to the end of the Civil War. And that was only through elementary school. Our thought was if we can just get people reading and doing basic academic work, maybe that's enough. And then the high school phenomena emerged to prepare you for the workforce as part of the war on poverty, that if we can just get people skills, we can get them into the workforce, we can fix this problem of systemic cyclical poverty. And so yes, the idea was to help citizens be able to think through problems, to give you the tools that you need to solve issues in your life, to help citizens form good opinions. You're constantly exposed to media, and often it's inaccurate. And you've got to discipline yourself to think through what is accurate and what is not. And that's a practice, a skill that has to be continually exercised. And then finally, we want to teach you to be articulate, to be able to voice your opinion in a way that makes sense, both orally and through writing. And that's literacy. It's one of our that's our school-wide goal, is literacy. It's on all of our staff professional goals for every year. We're going to teach our students how to be more literate. Why? Because we want you to be able to form your opinions intelligently and express them clearly. And after all, this will hopefully make you a better citizen. Now, whether or not you agree, and there are loopholes to this. If you hate the public school system, fair enough. You can check out charter schools, there's private schools, you can homeschool. The rule is you have to do something. It has to be related to education, and even if it's a homeschool, your parents or the person doing your homeschool has to provide evidence that they're actually homeschooling you, not just throwing you in front of a TV, because plenty of people try to get away with that. But again, public school is one of the most ambitious efforts to fulfill this obligation. With some responsibilities. Once more, these are voluntary. For example, being a good citizen means more than just doing what is required by the law. You have a responsibility to stay informed. Now, I have no way of knowing if you're listening or not. I mean, I can see if your eyes are open, I can see if you're not staring at some other screen, or, you're physically present in the room, so something's getting into your head right now, but I have no way of knowing. I don't know if you read the news. I'm pretty excited to have these publications to keep you current on things, but I still have no way of knowing. And I have no way of requiring you to be current. We can talk about current events in here, but it's really just a responsibility that you should be aware of what's going on in the world. It's certainly a responsibility that you should vote. As I said, Australia requires you to vote. I think you have to pay a fine if you don't. But if you don't vote in the United States, you don't have to tell anybody. It is a matter of public record. I mean, I can actually look up, did Dakota vote in the last election? No. Okay, he's not 18. Okay, well, 2 years later, did Dakota vote in the last election? No. Sad face, Because, and it's creepy, but that is a matter of public record. You can look it up. Now, I don't know who he votes for. That's his business. If he wants to share that, great. But I can know if he voted. But I can't take any action as a result of it. It's his choice if he wants to vote ultimately. Other responsibilities. You have the responsibility to respect others' rights. Now, when you're infringing on someone's right to the degree that you are harming them in an unlawful way, well, then that becomes a violation of an obligation. But if I'm just being mean to you in a way that cannot be defined as assault, slander, or libel, well, then I'm just being a jerk. And unfortunately, there's nothing illegal about being a jerk. But it's not socially responsible. It's not. You have a social responsibility to the people around you to be a good person. Again, you're not necessarily breaking the law if you're a jerk, but it's not going to go well for you. It's just a responsibility that we have. It's also a responsibility to show tolerance to others. That means that we respect and accept others, regardless of their beliefs, practices, or differences. And obviously there's been a lot of awareness raised in the past few years about this. There's the Me Too movement, there's the gay rights movement, there's social awareness campaigns about minority issues, about religious issues, etc., and political issues, on all sides. And research has shown that people who identify in various groups of any sort feel threatened. So if nothing else, we all have that in common, that we feel threatened. Whether you're a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male, or if you're a purple butterfly, then it doesn't matter. You feel threatened, and that's at least something that we have in common, is that we feel that people don't treat us decently. So that's something. We can start there. And we also feel that people should treat us decently. And we understand that we should treat others decently. But you know what? We also have a responsibility to be active in the community, to be engaged. Yes, you could leave school, get a job online, lock yourself in your house, order everything you need on Amazon, never leave home again. Yeah, that's a thing. There are people that live, work, and and socialize entirely online. And even though the internet is a community, it is. Even for the agoraphobes among us, you have to realize that when you're online, you're engaging in community. You are engaging with other people who have feelings and interests and concerns, and guess what? Also feel threatened. And also feel an inherent desire to be respected and treated with decency. And so wherever you are, whether it's online or in public, helping others benefits the community. It just does. I spend a lot of time in the wilderness. Occasionally I come up on someone who's hurt. It happens. And I always stop and try to help. I'm not a trained physician. I have some medical training, itty bitty, but I can relocate a shoulder. I can do CPR. I can evacuate someone. I can diagnose a concussion. A handful of basic wilderness first aid things, but that's about it. But the point is, I took that class because I spend a lot of time in the wilderness so that I can help others if necessary, because I have that responsibility as a good citizen. Okay, so how can young people contribute? Honestly, any of these, all of these, there's way more that you can do. It doesn't just have to be volunteer day. It's really just a matter of seeing a need and filling it. And it doesn't have to be some formal thing.